Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
I'm Bob, how's it going?
Bob and I are back again for another 2024 comparison. This is a big one.
Yeah, this is a fun group.
Yeah, this is right around 100 millimeters underfoot. I think we're going from what, 97, 98 to 102?
Yeah, and there's a lot of them in here, you know, for such a small grouping.
Yeah, there are. And what's nice is it would be even more overwhelming if we hadn't made that decision to pull twin tips out.
Right.
Because I believe this is just 20 skis, but when you start putting like all the 100 underfoot twin tips in this category, it would probably be like 40 skis.
Yeah, I mean, we got to draw the line somewhere, right?
Yeah. And somebody pointed out, I thought this was a really astute comment, that on the free ride video that we did, when I said something like, it feels like there are more differences among this group, somebody was like, well, yeah, because you got some twin tips up there. And I was like, it's an excellent point. Where, you know, I think like in certain sections of this comparison, the skis are really similar.
Yeah.
Rather than going from like a Playmaker 101 to a Mantra 102.
Right.
Where you're like, these things couldn't be more different.
Right. Someone who's solely shopping based on waist width will have two just polar opposites.
Totally, yep. So if you are curious how anything up here compares to a ski like a Playmaker 101 or an ARV 100 or something like that, definitely leave a comment or get in touch with us some other way, because we're more than happy to chat about that stuff.
Yep.
This felt like a better grouping.
Yep. And then like some little outliers like that Origin 101.
Right,
you know,
it's like pseudo twin tip.
And since they make a Helix 98, you know, that kind of takes Liberty's twin tip spot there.
Right. I mean, really, like QST 98. It's like there's not a lot that makes that not a twin tip. Right. So, kind of interesting. And this is a fun way to organize the skis. We are going basically what we determined as most playful to most powerful, or most maneuverable to most business-like, whatever adjectives you want to use. And we've kind of been joking that like throughout the video, we might move things around. Right. I don't think we actually will, but there are a few skis up here where, depending on kind of how you're viewing them and who's skiing them and stuff like that, you could kind of shift some things around.
There's fluidity here. This is not a best and final
black and white.
Black and white. This is very much a movable piece.
Yeah. We basically just put them in this order because it allows for a good conversation.
Totally.
So with that said, Bob, I believe you're going to get us started here with this Kesley ZX 100.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about this before we started, and I'm glad that I kind of got to start with this one, mostly because it fits my style of skiing a little bit better than yours.
Yeah. Yep.
We were talking in our previous comparison about how there's a big disparity between how many short swing turns I make on the side of the trail versus how many you make. Yeah. I make a lot more.
Yeah.
And that's where this ski really comes in handy. It's amazing when we get out on a Kesley day, you know, we go from a MX98, you know, that whole MX line, we do the FX, and then I get on something like this, the ZX100, and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm looking for out of my Kesley ski.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense.
Yeah, and there's no love lost for the power and stability of that MX98 or the high-end versatility of the FX96. But in terms of what I like to do, which is quick and agile, short swing turns on the side of the trail, maneuvering quickly through tight trees, bumps, anything kind of technical and where maneuverability is needed, that's where this ski really comes in handy. It does use kind of their, you know, we talk about ZX as being the more affordable option. It does kind of come through in the technology, but it's still like, you know, Kesley uses their materials really, really well. So blending like wider stringers of wood. When we talk about the MX, we'll talk about how they use more narrow stringers. This uses less kind of more a macro
Macro
block
versus
style.
micro block.
Yeah, and so by using that Paulownia or poplar and beech in this ski, it just kind of makes it a little bit more flexible. We do have the demo plate on here. That's usually about 200 grams. So we're 2148. So take 200 off that, and we're below 2,000. So that comes through. That weight comes through in the maneuverability, but we also really see it in this tip rocker. So ZX is really known for just kind of having that longer, more pronounced rocker in the shovel. There is some decent taper angle here as well. So this portion of the ski is highly maneuverable and easy to use. There is nice camber underfoot and then more of a square tail. So the difference between tip and tail in this ski is a little bit more pronounced than some of these that are a little bit more symmetrical in nature. And that's where you get the energy from. So the easy initiation and then right on to that nice, energetic completion of the turn, which is where I really like to see these things come in handy.
Reminds me of a Rossignol Sky 7 from a shaping perspective.
Yeah.
I'd say this ski is a little stronger than a Sky 7, but similar, like, just overall quickness.
Yep, and then same, just to carry on that, using their Holotech, similar to what Rossignol does with their air tip, just kind of making it a little bit easier to maneuver.
Yep.
And then we see that more flexible shovel here. So it does kind of get stiffer as you get underfoot and then through the tail. Tail is definitely stiffer than the shovel. So more of a difference tip to tail than what we see in some of these other symmetrically constructed skis. But I love this thing. I think that, for what we do around here, mixing woods and on-trail performance, like that's a really nice place to be.
Yeah.
And just to preface it too, because we ski here at Stowe a lot, we get a lot of small snowfalls.
Yeah, like 4 to 6 inches.
Yeah, so like it snows a lot here, but just not all at one time.
Yep.
So on a given day, something like that at 100 underfoot is really a useful ski.
Yeah, fantastic tree ski.
Yep.
It's, probably one of the best on this wall for tree skis. And there's a lot of really good ones, especially on the left side over here.
Yep.
But yeah, ZX100 is really good. And I think there's a limitation with the soft flex and the tip, but it's not a slouch on a groomer.
No.
It can handle it.
Yeah, I've been continuously impressed with the edge grip that you get out of that thing for not having metal and for being somewhat flexible in the shovel.
Certainly a world of difference between something like this and an MX98.
Yep.
But yeah, just because it's really good in the trees doesn't mean you can't ski a groomer also. You just can't. You can't ski a groomer with wild expectations.
Right. And it's just funny with the same company, like there's so many things that you can do on that you can't do on the MX and vice versa.
Correct.
Within 2 millimeters.
Yeah, definitely.
In the same company.
Yep. Pretty interesting stuff. So next up we have the Blizzard Hustle 10 here. So the Hustle 10's back unchanged for another season. We still get the same top sheet graphic and stuff like that. Obviously the Rustler 10 has changed a little bit. So this is no longer kind of a direct reflection of the Rustler 10 with a different build. It's really its own thing now, which I think is nice. I think, I don't know. I had a hard time, and I think we've talked about this plenty, but it was hard to differentiate between those skis, or why would I choose one over the other, and where are the benefits? And I feel like it's easier to make those, to differentiate the skis now.
Yeah.
So Hustle 10 back again. Really the key here is its energy, its pop and its snap out of a turn, whether that's a carving turn or whether that's a short skidded turn. I always really, really enjoy how easy it is to get it off the snow surface.
Yep.
When you load up the tail, kind of making little ollie hop turns and stuff like that. It just feels so bouncy and energetic, where something like the Rustler 10 feels more damp and more solid.
Yeah, a little more planted on the snow, whereas this is more eager to break from
I'm
that.
excited to talk about this Rustler 10 too, because I feel like I did some borderline questionable things on it to kind of like test its stability, which was really fun to do. And Hustle 10 doesn't quite have that, which is, it's nice to be able to talk about them as two different things.
Yeah.
True Blend Free Ride wood corn here. So this got True Blend before the Rustlers got True Blend, which was a kind of an ongoing conversation of when Rustlers would get it. And then we get carbon stringers in this ski rather than the metal found in the Rustlers. So considerably lighter. This is a shorter length. I think we're at 172 here.
Yep.
And we're at 1,760 grams. So if we were up at the 180, it would be a little bit heavier, but not considerably heavier. I think just in the mid-1800
I think it's like
range.
100 grams per length.
Exactly. So pretty darn lightweight. And then, like I said, it's just got this like super eager, energetic flex pattern that just loves to bounce around and play and pop off things, which I really, really like. And I think gives it a different personality than something like the ZX, where I feel like the ZX is so good at making those kind of quick subsequent turns. This can do it, but it just feels different. Like it's got a different attitude.
Yeah.
There's more up and down to its skiing rather than side to side.
And this is more consistent. That's kind of like what I was talking about. Like the flex tip to tail in this with the carbon is more consistent, whereas that is softer to stiffer.
Yep, agree 100%. Quite a lot of camber underfoot, which again, like that's where you're getting a lot of that snap and that energy. Good amount of tip rocker. Tip rocker is pretty darn important in this category. You're going to see tip rocker in basically everything up here. And then a decent amount of tail rocker too. The big difference here between this ski and the ZX is the amount of early taper. So there's some here. It's not like extended side cut, but compared to the ZX, it's not as much early taper. So that is changing its personality just a little bit. Again, that ski is a little bit quicker when you're making those kind of side-to-side turns. This ski is a little bit, let's say, quicker in how it reacts to changes in terrain.
Yep.
So really cool ski. Obviously, when it came out, it was kind of marketed and billed as more of a touring ski. And while that's certainly, it's a great option, like that's not true.
Right.
You don't need to put a touring binding on here to have a good time.
Right.
I do think like the narrower you go in the Hustle collection, the more and more appropriate they are as touring skis.
Yeah.
So like 1,750 grams is pretty light. Like that's...
It's light enough.
Totally. It's more than light enough as a touring ski. And then like when you go down to the 9, I think that's like really best as a touring ski. So maybe this is a little bit more leaning towards that alpine touring side of the spectrum rather than like the Hustle 11, which kind of feels a little bit caught in this like weird weight comparison with the Rustler 11.
Yeah. So
fantastic ski. I really like skiing it. Honestly, I'd love to own a pair.
Yeah.
Like I have that Elan Ripstick Tour 104. I would consider replacing that with this. It's a little bit more ski.
Yep.
And I feel like I could do more with it. So kind of cool.
And then just another note on that still follows the old shape to length ratio of the old Rustler.
Yeah, so it goes a little wider,
goes a little wider.
Longer to 104.
Yeah. So that if you're bringing length into the discussion, that could feasibly be the widest ski on this wall.
Right. If it was a 188
yeah.
and a 180 too, I can't remember.
I think 180.
I can't remember if the 180 goes to 104 or stays at 102.
No, it's such old technology now. It's like a year old.
I used to know those things.
I know.
Now I don't.
And then this one, this Liberty Origin 101, this falls, I mean, you know, these first three, you could make an argument that they are interchangeable in terms of playfulness for different reasons.
Yeah, for different reasons, for sure. They all feel different.
This one certainly falls more onto the free ride side of the spectrum.
Yeah. Long rocker lines.
Yeah, a lot of that is just really due to the profile of the ski. You know, it's also interesting that now Origin, you know, 96, 101, 106, they've really kind of condensed their widths And, you know, at first glance, it was like, oh, that 101 is just going to be lost in the middle.
Yeah, right. I remember when they first came out of it, and we did some pretty long-term testing on it, and going into that, we both were like, probably doesn't need, like, Liberty doesn't need this ski.
Yeah.
Like,
and
what's the point? And then we totally, I'm pretty convinced.
If this was the only one, I'd love it. You
Sure.
know, the fact that I've skied both the 96 and the 106 with like degrees of success that make this a little weird. But,
yeah, it's just, I think it's nice to have the option.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I like to kind of think about it as like an East versus West thing.
Yep.
Where like the way that we feel about the Origin 96 here is how somebody out west would feel about the 101.
Right.
Like it's an all-mountain ski. It's a daily driver tool.
Yeah.
Where when you go to 106, even for a Western skier, and probably somebody will disagree with me, and that's great, 106 is pretty wide.
Right.
Like there are days when even out west that just feels kind of unnecessary, but this is much more justifiable, in my opinion.
But if you told me that the 96 didn't exist, this was the narrowest Origin, they had this and a 106.
And a 112.
And a 112, I would say this thing is a blast. You know, there's no taking away from the ski's kind of individual accolades. We've had this thing on pretty firm snow, deep snow in the trees, excellent in the moguls. It's just one of those skis that goes where you want it to go and does so at a pretty high level.
Very easy to steer.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from the shape, but before that, the build, using that bamboo and poplar wood in here, mixing it with the carbon and then the vertical metal strut. You know, that's kind of where we saw this thing really kind of take off, is we have that metal in there that's really giving it a lot of energy, especially on the backside of the turn. Actually really makes this thing carve really well. Just under 2,000 grams here in the 182, so there is some weight to it, you know, and that kind of comes through. Still, it's not going to be the on-trail front side performer that we're going to see in that Evolve 100, but if you're looking to mix those conditions and terrain, this thing certainly takes the performance to a different level. And we've talked about this, you know, this rocker profile before. Very, very bendy here. So long tip rocker here, gradual and then a little bit more jutted out at the end. Nice positive camber underfoot. And then long but somewhat low in the tail. You know, this is kind of keeping it out of that freestyle twin tip spectrum. Very round, very low. Just really operates kind of in that rudder-like sphere where you can kind of use the tail to manipulate that turn shape a little bit easier, which is really a lot of fun.
So it's kind of interesting. I have no idea if this is going to work or not, or be accurate, but it's interesting that like we call that a pseudo twin tip. I bet there are skis up here that we considered fully directional that have as much or more rocker.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I thought this one might have more splay.
It used to.
I bet there are skis up here that do.
Yeah.
So it's actually, I'm looking at a few right now, like Justice. Justice almost definitely has more splay, and for whatever reason, this feels like more of a twin tip.
Right. And a lot of that is to do with that, you know, more flexible character. You know, this is a little bit more stiff in the tail than the tip, but really easy to initiate and super floaty. And that's just kind of where these Origins, bless you,
thank you,
really stand out from the rest of the skis here, is just that surfy mentality. But at the same time, it's amazing what it does on trail. And that's kind of why I think this 101 is a really fun ski in and of itself. You know, not even just in the light of the 96. Bless you.
Hopefully that's it.
Allergies are, pollen's high these days around here. But great graphics. I'm not going to let this ski go back on the wall without
showing off the graphics,
showing how nice it looks. But yeah,
you gotta go like that to get your
thank you,
your moon correct.
Yeah, but overall, you know, one of the more fun skis on this wall for sure. It's hard to kind of put it in a different place. You know, the Kesley for the energy in the tail, the Rustler for that tip to tail pop, and then this is just a little bit more surfy. So
I think the surfiness is where this is different than these skis. And that's like why I'm glad you said it. You said something like it feels more like a free ride ski, and that's where I get that same exact experience on this ski. Like the edge release is so easy, and it's so easy to throw them sideways, which like just feels like such a modern free ride-y thing to do. So I think the Origin 101 is awesome, and it's always really fun. I like situations where like somebody like yourself skis it, and then somebody like Ryan Daniel skis it, and like very different skiing styles, and it's cool to see that it can perform at a high level in both applications, like whether you're making quick, short turns on the side of the trail or whether you're just letting it run and making big sweeping carves. It can do both of those things, which is sort of counterintuitive just looking at its shape.
Right, you would think it would not be capable of adhering to the racer
cars.
side of the spectrum.
100%, yeah. And I think like, I guess this doesn't technically apply to the 101 because the VMT 1.0 construction predates the existence of the Origin 101.
Right.
But that was really important to the Origin line in general because I think before they added that, it didn't really hold up to those kind of racer style expectations where now it does a lot better.
Yeah.
Salomon QST 98, this ski is awesome. I'm really glad to have it up in this group. Obviously, we're 98 underfoot here, so a little bit narrower than some of the other skis on this wall. But the soft snow performance of this ski is off the charts. And I just think Salomon has done such a good job with the QST line. I'll admit that like I was not necessarily a fan of like kind of Salomon's maneuverable freeride skis back in like the Quest years.
Even like the older QST 99. Like
right, even when they went from Quest to the original QSTs, I was just kind of like, eh.
Right.
Like I understand why they exist and everyone can ski them and they're going to sell a boatload, but this is awesome.
Yeah.
And like QST 106 is awesome. QST 92 is awesome. The Blank is awesome. Like really the whole line is super cool. And for me, a big reason why it's so cool is similar to what we were just saying about the Origin. It has this like tremendous maneuverability, but then there's some strength to it too, which you like wouldn't necessarily expect. Like really the first time I had that reaction was on the Blank. So I was like, how did you make a ski this good in snow, in soft snow, that still has grip underfoot? And all those characteristics apply to the 98 as well. So poplar wood core in this ski. We get that Salomon CFX material. We get cork damplifiers in the tips and tails, and then we get a double sidewall construction underfoot. So a lot of little different elements in this ski, and I think that's really important because if they didn't exist, like I said, if you just had this shape, it would be very agile still and very maneuverable, but that's about it.
Yeah, they got to add the pop and the power and stability in somehow.
Totally. So it's cool how they do that. 1,970 grams, so just under 2,000 grams here, kind of middle of the road weight, not too light, not too heavy, and then really, really, really pronounced rocker profile. So tons of tip rocker, lots of early taper too. Like that, the effective edge on firm snow of these skis is like half of the length of the ski.
Yeah, you got to ski it pretty centrally if you want to really access the side cut.
100%. And then tail rocker, again, just like off the charts amount of tail rocker.
Yeah.
And then you put those things together and like visually and just like your perception of this ski is that it's going to be crazy quick, edge release is insanely easy, and all of those things are true, but then when you get it on a groomer, it's like really stiff, like right here.
Right.
So you can actually, like Bob said, as long as you're not like driving the shovel into something really firm, if you're staying pretty centered and balanced, you can make some quite dynamic carving turns on this ski, 17-meter turn radius, so it's not like, you know, sometimes when you have such a short effective edge, you really, really shorten that radius a ton. But 17 is not like too turny. So you can ski trees on this thing, you can ski moguls, you can ski powder, but you can ski a groomer, and the ski will respond pretty darn well. It is not for skiers that should be shopping over in that end of the wall. Right. Like, it's still similar with the Origin and everything else that we've talked about so far. Like, you have to have reasonable expectations on a groomer, but yeah, it can do it. And then the other thing that I love about this ski is you can ski it backwards. There's plenty of rides back there to ski it switch. I've done it tons and tons and tons of times, and it actually like feels really good skiing switch. So if you're the type of skier that you want an all-mountain ski, but you want to be able to pop a 180, or you want to be able to go mess around in the park and like try and learn some entry-level park tricks, like this is a really good choice. Yep. So it's just, yeah, I mean, I really like this line of skis from Salomon. I also really like what Salomon's doing in general as a company right now. Is we talked about this internally, they don't have too many skis.
No, and what they do have, they do really well.
Right.
And they're very specific to certain things. It's
right.
Almost like they're kind of moving like in Black Crow's direction.
Sort of, yeah.
You know, and even within QST, like the 92 and the 98 are very different skis.
Very different.
So it's not, you know, it's not like this versus Serpo.
Right.
You know, it's kind of encroaching on that difference. So it's interesting what they're doing.
Yeah, and I like that like you kind of said, they're focused in their direction and what they're trying to do. They're not trying to cover everything. Yeah. You know, like it feels like Salomon's willing to accept like, oh, we don't have a ski for you. Yeah. I don't know who you are or what that skier is, but they're not trying to just blanket the entire skiing world, which some manufacturers do. I would say most major manufacturers try and build a ski for everybody. And I don't necessarily know that that's the right thing to do.
But then at the same time, this could be that ski for those that mix conditions and terrain. Like, oh, here's your QST 98.
Totally.
You know, we talk about it with the 92 all the time. Like, if you don't know what ski to get that one. Yeah. You know, this follows the same principles, just in a wider platform.
Yeah. And I think, like, I've said that before, and I've heard other people like that have no affiliation to us. I've heard similar things from other people of just like, oh, you want a versatile all-mountain ski? Yeah, get a QST 98. Yeah. That's all you need.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They definitely fall on the dramatic side of the spectrum when it comes to that shape and profile principle.
They're very, very dramatic, yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot of shape.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's just impressive that without the use of like a bunch of metal or something, they can retain as much like strength and trust. Yeah. Like imagine if this ski just had like a super soft flex, like if I could just push right through the flex pattern of it, like you wouldn't even really be able to ski it. So it's an impressive accomplishment from like an engineering perspective, and yeah, I think Salomon did a really good job with those skis.
I think it's an interesting segue into this one, which follows the same kind of dramatic principles. Yeah. This is a new DPS Kaizen 100, and we've talked about the 105. No, the 112 I think was in the free ride comparison. We haven't gotten to the mid 100s yet, I don't think. But basically 3 new ski models, 100, 105, 112. The 105 follows the older C2 shaping principles, while the 100 and the 112 are more of the RP style. So they did change it a little bit, but they are now calling this the rocker profile. And so they're still adhering to that 15-meter turn radius through the use of manipulating the taper and the rocker profile. New thing with construction here is their split core. We've talked about it with Nordica, using their dual core technology in Steadfast and in Spitfire series skis. So they are using horizontal wood laminates here stacked on each other. So ash and poplar, and then we still get the 2 sheets of carbon top and bottom. So there's a lot going on in this razor thin profile.
Yeah.
You know, comparing this to thicker skis like that Salomon and the Liberty,
Totally.
there's just a lot more thickness in the shovel and the tail especially versus this DPS, which is just very thin. So they're able to get a lot of material, and the quality of the carbon that they use allows it to maintain its integrity and rigidity while keeping this thing at a pretty light weight. So 1,750 grams. What length is this here? 179. So really interesting kind of blend of what we're looking for, a nice soft snow character while still being really, really agile and responsive. There are some, I would say responsiveness is one of the bigger variations, maybe on your side of the wall there, Jeff. Something like the Atomic, has that blend of lightweight and stiff flex.
Yeah,
This
very
head,
responsive.
this DPS, they definitely have that, every bit that you put in gets instantly translated to the snow. When you get into the heavier, more metallic skis, they're strong and stable, but they're not quite as, hooking into the turn.
Yeah, they're not as reactive.
Yeah.
Like I was over here looking at these 2 skis, Ranger 102 and Rustler 10, as the counter to that.
Totally.
And it's like, it's an interesting thing because sometimes that like translates to forgiveness. Like it does for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I like these 2 skis more than I like that ski.
Yeah.
Because as you'll see in footage of me skiing this, if I land without my weight like in a proper place, like my technique goes out the window for a second, things like this are more forgiving.
Yeah.
Where things like that, you have to be pretty precise in your skiing because the ski is so reactive. And you could say the same thing about like ZX.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about the Kaizen 100 is that it's still meant to be used in softer snow.
Totally.
It does have some of that firm snow capability, but like you were saying, Jeff, if you kind of get, if you get a little bit squirrely, there's not much here in terms of the shape that's going to keep you on the snow.
Right.
Which, if you want to regain control,
right,
that's where you need to be.
Right.
So that makes this thing a little bit more difficult to maneuver or manage, on firmer snow.
Yeah, it's easy to maneuver.
Yeah.
It's so easy to maneuver that you can get in trouble.
Yep. And I think that's kind of pushing this thing towards more powder-oriented side. So
I agree.
If you think
100%.
about DPS and kind of their base in Utah, like that's where this thing is meant to be. Just the amount of splay here in the shovel and the length of the rocker puts this thing on a different category, certainly than kind of what we've seen out of those. The Salomon has some of the similar notes here in the shovel, but that taper's brought way down. Again, we're shortening the effective edge. The tail is where we see some difference. I think this is where you got kind of tripped up. The older Pagoda 100
had a lot
more splay.
Yeah.
So they've shortened the splay but kept the rocker long.
Yeah.
Kind of putting a little bit more of that directional nature to the ski. But again, we see that widest part dropped way back into the tail. So that's giving this thing that short 15-meter turn radius. But really an interesting ski. I was always an RP fan. I'm more of a C2 skier on paper, but every time I got on that Pagoda 100 RP, I really, really enjoyed it. Similar reasons to why I really enjoy that Salomon. Is that shorter turn radius.
Yeah.
You're able to get, the full, breadth of the carve, which is really, really fun. But certainly this thing with its lightweight, long rocker, dramatic splay, is meant to just float right down fresh and soft snow.
Yep. I find a difference in their eagerness to turn between that and the QST.
Yep.
And that's where I get a little bit hung up, is whenever I ski, really most DPS, I suppose taking out things like Koala and stuff like that, and like similar things happen on skis like the ZX 100. Like I'll make one turn, and then the ski wants to make the next turn, and there's a part of me that's like, wait, hold on,
I'm not ready
yet. And not from like a lack of ability to do so, but that's just not how I like to ski.
Yeah.
Like I kind of like to let things drift a little bit and just like smear, and those things don't really love to smear.
And I'd say that that's one of the similar reasons why you and like this Core 99 don't get along perfectly well. You know, these carbon powered skis, you know, even though you can still flex it a little bit better than this Core, it's thinner, so you're going to be able to bend it more, whereas this has a little bit more of that stiffness.
Yeah.
You can throw it sideways, but once it gets sideways, what are you going to do with it then?
Exactly. Right. It can be a bit harsh when you throw it sideways. But I mean, a tremendous ski. And like, if you're a technical skier that likes to go out and find demanding technical lines that require quickness and agility and just like 100% commitment, this is probably the best choice on this whole wall.
It's amazing how much thinner they've made them from last year.
They're crazy.
Too. Yeah.
And it's reflected in the price.
Right.
But again, like if that's your style of skiing, like you're a really like adventure type skier, like you like to explore, and you're almost more of a mountaineer.
Yeah.
You know, like this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Next ski is, I'd say, much more straightforward and traditional compared to the last two skis that we've looked at. This is the Scott Pure Mission 98 Ti, and a really interesting ski. Bob, I know you love this one. You've skied it considerably more than me, but I do really appreciate everything that Scott does, because skis like this are they're very simple.
Yep.
And like a lot of times you don't need to do crazy things to achieve a good ski.
Right.
The last two skis we looked at are complete exceptions to that, where they both did crazy things and the skis are fantastic.
Right.
But like that takes a lot of engineering, where this is kind of just like a proven recipe. So mix of wood core in here, we get poplar and paulownia. Pretty easy to see those carbon stringers that run through the center of the ski. And then there is a little bit of metal underfoot. To me, it's interesting that they call it TI.
Pretty much all of their skis are that way, where they call them a TI.
And that's it.
And it's very different than what we see from, you know, any of these other metal-powered skis that are full or mostly metal.
Yep. So this is a 184 centimeter length, and we're just at 1,860 grams there. So that's basically the result of not having a ton of metal there.
Right.
They keep the ski pretty darn lightweight, and it feels very lightweight when you ski it. You know, they are taking some mass out of the very, very end of the tip there, which I think adds to its feel. So, like I said, just a very straightforward ski. Good amount of tip rocker up here, but not a tremendous amount of early taper, so you get like a long, consistent, reliable, effective edge. And then the same is true in the tail. So there's a decent amount of rise in the tail, but not a ton. And then really not any early taper whatsoever. You know, I think like that's the widest point of the ski, but is 15 centimeters enough to even call it early taper?
I mean, it's pretty
pretty
flat and square.
Right. So really long, effective edge. And what's nice about this ski is it's not too heavy, nor is it too stiff. So if you had this shape and we were at 2,200 grams with a really, really stiff flex pattern, this ski would be all the way at the end of the wall over there. But because they keep the weight down and because the flex pattern is nice and round, it's pretty agile. And like, it's kind of interesting because Scott doesn't grace many magazine covers as a brand, but you could easily make an argument that this is the most well-rounded ski on this entire wall. And I think like that's a great way to describe it. And the person who should be choosing it is more of a traditionalist skier. Like,
yeah. Like me.
Right. Like
Yeah.
you've been skiing for a long time and you probably learned on straight skis.
Yeah.
And like when you take that recipe as a skier, this ski works really, really, really well.
I found that to be true about this as well as the 90 in this line,
definitely.
where, this is just a traditionalist ski. There's a lot of just familiar feelings to it.
Exactly. It's like familiar feedback.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, right. I remember this ski.
I put in this amount of energy, I get that much back.
Yes.
There are no surprises.
Right.
It's as intuitive as it gets on this wall.
Yeah. And not hard to ski.
Nope. Regardless of the conditions or terrain.
Yep.
It is amazing at just kind of adapting to what is going on under your foot.
Yep.
We've also talked about it with Scott, and it's a nice kind of piggyback on the DPS, a little bit thicker of that core profile
Yeah, I mean,
throughout.
compared to that DPS,
Yeah.
very thick.
And that just gives you a nice insulation layer underfoot. So very quiet and very smooth.
Like your feet stay warmer.
Your feet stay warmer. I love how you think that that's what I mean by insulation. But I skied that on the same day as an Unleashed 98, which would have fit great up here were it not a twin tip, and reserving that for a twin tip wall.
It's too freestyle-y.
Yeah.
I couldn't let you do it. You tried to put it up here,
It was
and
up here
I was
for a
like,
minute,
no, that's
Yeah.
that belongs in the twin tip comparison.
But it was interesting getting that back to back, especially when we had, 6-8 inches of pretty dry snow that day. So I was able to kind of go trees, bumps, crud groomers back to back.
Yep.
And it was amazing how well that thing tracked.
Yep.
It went wherever you put it, easy to turn. Even just the Unleashed, which is fine in that regard, still wanted to kind of hook in a little bit more. Whereas that was, even as a more directional ski, was easier to break free from the turn and get into the next one.
Which is a really interesting comparison, because
Yeah.
most people, I think, when they look at a twin tip, they think it's going to be super loose and easy, but that Unleashed is a little bit of it's a standout in the twin tip world, and that'll be a fun comparison because you'll get to see it next to a lot of other twin tips, and then I think then it'll visually be easy to see and understand why that is.
Yeah, I'm just continually impressed with that Mission 98.
This is interesting because I think it's fair to say that you like the Scott more than me, and I got that one. And I think it's fair to say that I like this ski more than you, and you're the one that's going to introduce this.
Well, we can all have our own opinions on skis, and that's the fun part.
Yeah, no, that's
Yep.
totally.
These Ranger 102s,
Great ski.
carry over from last year. They do a lot of things really well. The shovel shape for me is a little bit tricky, just because it's on the softer side. We have footage of Chris, one of our employees, skiing on this in soft snow.
Yeah, they're going to see it.
And he is just like dialed on this ski.
Yep.
Like Emily, dialed
Yep.
on this ski.
Yep.
When you get a little bit heavier and a little bit more, I would say top heavy in my case.
Yep.
That's where my issues creep in.
Yeah, and Chris is probably lighter than me,
Yeah.
I think. He's at least similar weight to me, 150, 160.
Which is like, I think is a nice contrast to the head, which we talk about skiers like you, Chris, Emily, lighter skiers with good technique, kind of have a hard time, achieving the flex of the ski. Whereas this is a lot more amenable to your input in terms of getting that ski to initiate.
Yep.
But we've gone over this before. It's a poplar beechwood core with this Shape Titanal laminate here. Does extend a little bit farther than we see in the 108, and just extends with these little arms, kind of similar to what we'll see with Black Crows and K2 and how they shape their metal, just putting a little bit more emphasis on the forebody and through the tail. I kind of feel like this has more of the older Rustler 10 notes where that metal came up and then stopped.
I would agree.
And then it leaves this portion of the ski, which is unencumbered by that metal. So it ends up being more flexible, and they add that spoony shape. That's really the big part here, is that the width really comes up all through the end. which if you're in soft snow is going to stay right up on top. I've had more success on this than maybe the 96 or the 108. You know, like you can ski this thing centrally and have it really hook up well. That metal underfoot does help. But nice long, I mean, splay to almost match the DPS. You know, it's a little bit shorter at the end, but that's also just because it almost looks like they flattened out the tip shape a little bit. And then, you know, this is more splay than we see in a lot of skis here. So certainly opens up that creativity, that creative aspect to the ski, allowing for, you know, more freestyle, more free ride oriented skiing, just with that playful release in the tail.
Yeah, if they rounded out that tail,
yeah,
I feel like people would almost consider it a twin tip, and then it would look, and we've had this discussion before, this is not new,
yeah,
but it would look more similar to the pink Ranger 102.
Right.
Because we went through that whole process. The dimensions are the same.
Right.
And it's just visually it still looks more directional, and I think that hacking off the end of the tail there is a big reason why.
Yeah, and they called the tip width the same, but they also just varied that taper.
The shovel shape is different.
The shovel shape was very different. That older the older carbon nose, you know, for me worked better.
Yeah, it was more like elongated shape.
But very interesting what they've done with these Ranger 102s, and I think just, you know, certainly could be more in that playful zone with the Salomon and the Origin, but the metal underfoot I think does make it, I think, amenable to those higher performance, you know, mixed terrain capabilities.
Yeah, and another thing for me is what are we, is this the 7th ski that we've looked at? 6th? 7th.
7th.
I think it's the best Carver so far. So that's like, that's a big reason for me why it needs to be at least somewhat in this direction on the wall. Is it has some nice grip to it.
Yeah.
And then I think that is like skier weight dependent, because that we've seen more success from myself in that application than from you.
Yep. And that's fine.
Yeah. I really like the Ranger 102 because every time I ski it makes me feel like I'm a better skier than I think I am.
I mean, that's part of the deal, right? You want to
Totally.
You want something that's easy, that helps you succeed and progress.
Yeah.
And those are wonderful attributes to have in a
it
ski.
just works so well for how I like to ski, at least in a directional format.
Right.
It is too directional for me to really love it as like freestyle-y free ride ski.
Yeah.
And we kind of went through that testing, and like for me a big reason is because you can't really move the mount point off like this flex cut spot. Like that's where
you can. It's just going to more dramatically alter.
It's going to mess up the way that the ski feels, in my opinion. So being set back that far, it makes things like skiing in the park kind of tricky.
Yeah.
At least, like, I don't know. I just remember doing a rodeo on it and being scared. But everything else is great.
Yeah.
Like I love the way it feels in the trees and just cruising around the rest of the mountain, and even like popping a 180 off a natural hit and stuff like that. It does it great. It's just not like, this feels more freestyle-y free ride to me than Ranger.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
So next ski up here is very different. This is the Liberty Evolve 100. Pretty cool mix of ingredients in this ski: bamboo, poplar, carbon, and VMT 3.0. So different than that Origin 101, VMT 3.0, pretty self-explanatory. It gives us 3 strips of that vertical metal, and that really does quite a lot to stiffen up the ski. So the flex pattern of this ski is probably the stiffest thing that we've looked at so far. And before we started filming, we were kind of chatting about where certain skis could move, and I'd be fine putting this ski like there.
Yeah, this one has the most rightward movement potential.
Right. And the reason why I think it's fine to keep it over here is because it's not really heavy. And there's something about its attitude and performance and just like overall feel that carries over some of just what you would expect from Liberty. It's got these like free ride notes to it. Edge release is easier than you would expect from the shape.
It's like, it's a playful carver.
Exactly.
So I think that's kind of what the impetus was for keeping it over there. Although, like, I think an even swap with that Rustler wouldn't be out of the question.
And again, that's like where it's totally skier dependent.
Yeah.
And like what lens you're viewing this whole collection through, like, and when I say lens, I basically mean like how do you ski? Like what are you going to be doing on it? And that, yeah, it's totally different in how you could group them, but it is a phenomenal ski. 1,930 grams, so not super heavy, and that's key. Like it is easier to kind of flick around than a lot of the skis that we're going to look at over there. Like Enforcer 100 has a more playful shape.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody can argue with me there, but it does not ski in a more playful way than this because it's just heavier and it's got more heft to it.
Yeah.
So, kind of interesting. This ski is like, I always think of it as just very flat. There's a good amount of camber underfoot, but like, there's almost not a tip. It's really interesting.
It is interesting.
Like, there's not much rise there at all.
And what's amazing is that it doesn't ski flat; it skis round.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Well, and like, this shovel can also handle some softer snow.
Yep.
Like it's great. It's a great ski for kind of like crud busting style skiing, which makes sense because Liberty is a Colorado-based company, and when I think of skiing in Colorado, I think of chopped up bowls.
Right. Windblown snow.
Right.
Yeah.
And this ski absolutely eats that stuff up, and like kind of the equivalent that we get here is if we get one of those like 4 to 6 inch snowstorms, and then you go ski like nosedive and hayride.
Right.
Because like there's some firm stuff under there, but the ski needs to be able to get through the soft stuff and still grip and kind of deliver the performance that you're looking for. And this ski does it really well. So not much rise up there in the tip, but it can really like, it's like a knife-like ski in the way it cuts through things. It's not floating over things, it's cutting through it. And then the tail like is basically flat. Right. Is it the flattest tail? Like MX-98 is probably
I'd say
flatter. But if you take that one out, Storm Rider 102 is pretty flat. So it's right there among those like true directional skis. But again, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel completely locked into a turn, which I think is really nice. I do think its highlight is being locked into a turn and just riding like railroad track, clean, round carves through choppy snow or whatever conditions you're encountering. But it's not like, it's not scary. It doesn't feel so demanding that it's like, that you don't feel like you can get out of a turn, which I think is really important. And that's for me where kind of that Liberty heritage and attitude is coming over to this ski.
It has very good insulative properties too, Jeff. It's
quiet.
Yeah, very quiet. Similar to that Scott. You know, there's just more thickness underfoot, and that's really just
super thick.
It's taken the din down. You know, there's minimal noise from this ski, which, you know, for Liberty, that's true for the Origin as well, but
this is quieter.
Yeah, the silence of this ski is just outstanding. You really don't hear anything underfoot. It gives it more of that premium quality, that high end feel, which, you know, we would normally expect from a Stokely or a Kesley. You know, Black Crows even is in that group now, but it just does it a lot more silent. Like it feels like a Stokely. Yeah,
it kind of does. Yeah,
which I think is really impressive from a Colorado freeride company.
It doesn't feel exactly like a Stokely.
No.
But it's got hints of the same concept, which is cool.
And I'd say the Atomic is kind of on the other end of that spectrum where you feel the things under your foot.
Yeah, this is one of those more reactive skis.
Yeah, if you think
energetic and reactive.
You know, if you think about, like, if we like to use our car analogies, but like this feels more like a low to the ground, firm suspension vehicle that corners extremely well, but you're feeling it in the steering wheel.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's you know, kind of a hallmark of these skis, this Maverick 100 specifically, the head core as well, where you're getting just an extreme amount of precision and reaction for a relatively light weight. So for having 2 sheets of metal, we're at under 1,800 grams here. Is this the 180 here?
It's gotta be.
180. So really impressive how they're able to pack this much power and energy into a ski that's sub 1,900 grams.
Yeah, and not the most power.
Nope.
I think like everything over there is more powerful.
Yeah.
From a stability at speed and edge grip perspective. Maybe not edge grip. I don't know.
I don't know.
Pretty much.
This thing's pretty hooky. You know, it definitely, you feel the turn start here.
Yeah.
And it is stiff enough, and you really feel it hold on back to the end. Your saving grace here is that they do incorporate some taper and rocker into it. Yeah. So that's making it just allow you to break free from the turn a little bit earlier. We've skied this thing in soft snow, trees. It's really amenable to those conditions and terrain, which is, I think, a surprising kind of balance to how precise and strong it is on trail.
Yeah, like in soft snow, you can feel the bent 100 influence.
Yeah.
Like the shovel is not that much different.
No, when we hold up that bent to this, like from
right
here forward, it is
like
the same
basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So obviously the rest of the ski is different and causes a difference, but you feel that difference more on soft or more on firm snow. Yeah. So yeah, I think they did a really good job, like kind of bringing in some of their existing success in trees and soft snow from other skis and applying it to this.
Yeah, and for, you know, most skiers that are looking for kind of that on-trail performance, you know, this is a better choice than that Bent 100, which
it definitely is
more of a soft snow specialist.
Yeah, I like, you know, Bents are cool, and like Bent, you could make an argument you could put up here because it's not like super symmetrical from like a freestyle perspective. It kind of is a directional twin, but yeah, like this ski, of course it carves better because there's metal in it.
Right.
And like it's designed to do that. So it's just an interesting kind of comparison. And I often like bringing in the Backland 100 into the atomic conversation too. Because literally if you put those 3 skis on the wall, especially if you're looking at the forebody of them, there aren't many differences. Nope. But when you ski them, you do start to appreciate just their like the kind of subtle differences in how they feel and what they're intended to do.
Yeah, and this one certainly falls on the higher end of that performance spectrum.
Yeah, and among those 3 skis, it's the highest.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this thing reps. Like, you really kind of have to be ready and prepared to deal with the stiffness of this ski.
Yeah.
You know, there is some tail rocker. We kind of looked at that splay earlier, but, you know, it's long enough. But it's certainly... when they take that ski and go from sidewall into cap, it doesn't lose a lot of its power and stiffness. And that's kind of what we see in more of that free ride realm, like a line blade optic that goes from sidewall to cap, and then you see a big difference in the flex. This is not really that. You know, we see a very stiff flex from tip to tail, and they're really only using this shape and that slight rocker to allow it to be more approachable for more skiers.
Yeah, and I think it's like that shift to cap construction. It's not taking out longitudinal stiffness, but I think it's taking out some torsional stiffness.
Yeah.
Which, when you combine with the rocker and the Horizon Tech and the taper, like that's on purpose.
Yep.
They don't want the extremities of this ski to be too torsionally stiff.
And if you use the term knife-like for the Evolve 100, you
very knife-like.
Very much incorporate that same characteristic into this Maverick 100.
Yeah, but a little more floaty.
Yeah.
You get a little bit more, like, we looked at the amount of tip rocker in that ski, and that's a pretty big difference compared to Evolve. So I agree 100% that they both have knife-like qualities,
yeah.
But yeah, you definitely get more soft snow float from the Maverick, which I think is cool.
Yeah, and like when we're comparing this to something else with more like dampness, like it's not the quietest ski out there. You certainly feel it, declivity, it's a quieter experience.
Yep. I think just about everything over there is quieter except for maybe that Core 99.
Yeah.
But we've been pretty open about like my weight and not really working well with some of those lighter, stiffer skis, but that does not carry over to this.
Right.
This ski is just fine for me.
Yep.
In fact, it's a lot of fun to ski, and I really enjoy skiing it. It's probably not what I would choose for myself.
Yeah.
I don't really know why. I just don't do what this ski wants to do very often without also wanting a twin tip.
And like I'm kind of the opposite. If you handed me that ski in the 188, I would ski it all year and be super happy.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that thing from tip to tail, top to bottom.
Yeah, I enjoy skiing it. It just doesn't really fit with what I do on skis.
Yeah.
When I'm skiing for myself, that is.
Right. And it's not a surprise that ski, we've talked about the Core 99, which is also one that fits my skiing size and style quite well.
Right. Yeah, you don't go into the park very often.
Well, I do, only to follow you.
That's true. And like, it's not just the going into the park, because there are tons of days when I go skiing for myself and I never step foot in the park. It's really more of just a mentality.
Yeah.
And kind of a style thing, and the things I like to do on groomers and the things I like to do on the trees. And like, if I'm coming out of the trees and there's a little mound and I can land switch and powder somewhere, like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Right.
Where like I can't really do
no.
that on a Maverick. And I mentioned kind of the freestyle-y free ride influence in this ski, and this is one that I can do things like that. So
yep.
I'm very excited about this new Rustler 10. I think that's probably come through with the whole Rustler line, particularly the 9 and the 10. I like the 11 too, but the application here is fewer and further between.
Yeah.
But this ski is awesome. I really appreciate the changes that they've put into it. To me, it kind of feels like almost like an updated Enforcer 104 in how it skis and the things it can do. Like that Enforcer 104 is quite heavy.
Yep.
And we'll see similarities when we get to Enforcer 100. This is not as strong overall. Like Enforcer 104 still surpasses this ski in terms of like just straight down the fall line stability and vibration damping and stuff like that. But this to me has a lot of similar qualities while being a little bit easier to ski. There's a lot of people out there that Enforcers are just too heavy.
Yeah, you got to really be honest with yourself as to how often you're using
that top end of
part of the ski,
right,
versus this part.
Correct.
And I think that's where this Rustler 10
yeah, and I think
there's
more people that use that part of the ski. So totally new construction in this ski, new shape too, although there's not like drastic changes in the shape. I think like the tail is kind of interesting, and we will look at the shape just in a moment here. But we get that True Blend wood core, that True Blend Freeride wood core, basically the same that we get in the Hustle. But in this ski, we get that flux form metal application. So it kind of looks like H-shaped metal, but it's actually 3 different pieces. So there's a piece of metal underfoot that is not physically connected to the metal along the edges. And then we basically get 2 more strips of metal that run tip to tail just along the edges. And that metal changes in width or thickness, whichever one, this way.
Width.
Yeah, it changes in width basically as you're going up and down in the Rustler line. So the 9 has the widest metal, where the 11 has the narrowest metal, leaving this right in between. 1,850 grams, and it's a 180.
Yeah, so like proportionally similar to the Hustle. So that was like 1750.
Sure, it's not far off Hustle. Like, Hustle is a little lighter, and then again, it's like that energy versus stability thing. But I just think it's impressive that Blizzard built in this much vibration damping and stability while keeping the weight down quite a bit. And then I think the shape is great. We get a ton of splay up in the tip. Like this just...
I'd say probably the most so far, At
least the most so far. So just the way that it kind of eats up soft snow and kind of just skips over anything that you point it to is awesome. I'd say this is not a knife-like ski.
No.
It's more of a spatula-like ski, if we're sticking with kitchen utensils. And then not a ton of splay back here in the tail, but from a length perspective, quite a lot of tail rocker. So I really like that. You know, again, not a twin tip, but it lets you release the tail edge super easily. You can land switch if you want to, and it's definitely not locked in soft snow. You get that kind of surfy, smeary feel that I think basically everyone has come to expect from Rustlers at this point.
Yeah.
For me, the big thing, like the biggest improvement in these Rustlers, I think maneuverability and quickness basically stays the same compared to the skis that they're replacing, but I think the stability and the vibration dampening ticks up a notch or two, or three. Those previous Rustler 10s, and I feel like it happened more in the 10 than the 9 or the 11, it kind of had that like hinge point style, where like where the metal ended, you could physically feel a change in the flex pattern, and that really came through when you skied it. This ski is much more consistent and reliable from tip to tail, and I mentioned doing like some silly things. There was like there's a head wall on Hayride that's basically just like an ice flow. What does it look like in the summer? Is it just a waterfall?
I think it's rock.
Rock and kind of water running down it?
Yeah.
But in the winter, it's just an ice flow, and for whatever reason, we were standing a couple hundred yards above it, and I was like, Bob, will you go tell me what's on the other side of that? And you were like, it's ice. And I was like, perfect.
Okay.
So I went really fast, and I just aired into the ice and then went really fast out of the ice. And I was very impressed with how composed this ski stayed. It isn't the same as basically everything over there, starting with Justice, moving that way, with the exception of the last two skis. I would rather do that on those. The last two skis are too precise and demanding, where I would land and feel like I couldn't stop.
Yep.
But everything else in there, I think, has a little bit more stability for people that like to ski kind of stupidly fast and like make like your willingness to take risk is kind of arguably too high or higher than it should be. Like, I think there are some better choices over there, but this is really good, and I think it's better than the old Rustler. I don't know for sure because I'm me, but I bet there's a little bit of a weight variance from a skier weight perspective. Is if you're a really big guy and you're looking to do things like the silliness that I was doing on Hayride, it might not really work the same, and you might need to go over there or something to Enforcer 104. But for a lighter skier, I think it's awesome, and then it's still just as agile and quick in the trees as it's ever been. So it's a sweet ski.
You know, during that day that you're talking about, I think I was on a Bonafide in the morning, skiing with Blizzard.
Yep.
And then everyone else switched to a Rustler 9.
And you were on
and
this.
I went to this.
Yep.
And it was really interesting, not just going from Bonafide to Rustler 10, which, you know, opened up a whole new world of versatility.
Yep.
With the Rustler, but also just watching our other skiers on the Rustler 9 making these nice, short, fun, playful turns. And then, you know, with me, I'm following behind, just, you know, letting it roll, letting it run.
Yeah.
And just like being, oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, and I skied in the bumps too, like for a 102 with metal, like it's fine.
Yeah, you did just fine in the bumps.
It's certainly less agile than some other skis that we've talked about here.
Yep.
And that's fine. You know, it's that rolling, that stability, that flotation that really stands out with that ski.
It's definitely not as quick as like anything over here.
Right.
You know, I think Ranger 102 and Rustler 10 is a reasonable comparison.
Yep.
I think there are differences among them, and I think this ski has a bit more overall stability. I think the Ranger probably makes a rounder, cleaner carve, but there's some similarities between them for sure.
Yep.
I really like the black and orange too.
I'm glad they did that. I think that's a nice.
Yeah, I'm glad they put it on the
break.
10. I almost kind of wish they put it on the 9.
Yeah.
Because the orange is like the team color from Blizzard, and often you see it get put onto like the really wide skis or like something like a Cochise 106.
Right.
And it's like, hey, I'm not going to ski a Cochise 106, but I really like the orange. Like, could I have an easier going ski that happens to also be orange? Cochise 106 is awesome. It's just exhausting.
Yeah, and it's a very specific tool for a specific job.
Yep.
This one, I would say the Scott so far has the most to share in terms of character. This Dynastar M Pro 99, we joked about it yesterday. It seems like we've been skiing on this ski for...
I couldn't believe how far
years.
back I can go in my hard drives and still find M Pro 99 footage.
Yeah, and they've only slightly changed the graphic. You know,
the sidewalls are colored now.
They have like
about it.
A little bit of marbling, like M3 marbling in the top sheet, and I think base too, maybe.
I don't know. I think just sidewalls.
Regardless, first time I got on this ski, I thought, "Yep, they finally have something that I really enjoy, that speaks to my style, that has a playful shovel, that's easy to maneuver." It has a
strong tail.
Very strong tail. They do that through the use of their construction and shaping. We've talked about this before, but they do use their hybrid wood core in here. So poplar and then polyurethane on the sides. And then they use their rocket frame Titanal layer in here. Full width underfoot. And then in the shovel, it extends more to a point. This is kind of what we dealt with Rustler over the past few years, where that central strip would extend. And then in the tail, it goes wider and almost to the very end. So we're dealing with a stiffer and flatter tail, and it's still pretty stiff, but it's certainly more maneuverable.
There's a lot of rocker in the tip.
A lot of rocker in the tip. So that allows you to really kind of dictate where you're headed on the turn super easily. Kesley, that ZX100 also follows this same type of strategy. The difference there is that it's narrower in the tip. And so that puts more onus on the skier to say where and when you're going to go and for how long.
Yeah.
So having that more traditional shape is really kind of, again, kind of like that straight skier, that person that grew up on straight skis that has kind of this fundamental, I want to pressure the tip of the ski in order to get it to turn. That's this style.
And you know how to use a stiff tail to your advantage rather than it being like a hindrance to what you can do.
Yeah. You know, there's some rocker back here, but really not a whole lot.
And I think that tail is like really where they made a pretty significant departure from Sham and Legend.
Yep.
You know, the tip of the ski is kind of along the same lines, but it's so much stronger in the tail.
I would say the strength for me on this ski is its ability to make very many different shape and style turns. From my short swing turns on the side of the trail that I love, to opening it up and hitting top speeds on a groomer.
Yeah.
There's really a huge range of turns you can make on this thing.
Yeah, that thing rips.
Yeah.
If you just open it up and let it run.
Yep.
It makes some pretty strong dynamic carving turns.
Yep.
And then it's like those short skidded turns, it's just more of a traditional skiing style.
Yeah.
Like you need to, it's kind of like Scott, like you said, like you need to know what to do with a flatter tail.
Yep.
And, you know, I think every skier out there understands what they need to do with a flatter tail. It's more like whether you want that or not.
Yeah.
Like whether you like having that stiffer tail to kind of like manipulate into your next turn.
Yeah, and you're going to pay for it from time to time. You know, it's certainly not going to release like that Origin in the woods.
No.
You know, you can ski it in the trees. It's not the best tree ski up here.
No, and it's like the polar opposite from the M3 99.
Right.
So it's kind of cool how Dynastar takes their skis and like really puts them in two different directions, which is kind of similar to Salomon with like QST and Stance. Like, although I think you could make the argument that Dynastars are even more different than each other than QST and Stance.
Yeah. So just under 2,000 grams here on this M Pro. It does have a slightly longer turn radius too, so 20 meters here. Once you get into the 186, I think it's like 22.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an outlier in this group, is just that bigger number. But I really like that, and I also really like always showing the difference between how K2 does their metal and how Dynastar does their metal.
Yeah, it's cool to see that.
Excuse me. It's basically like you could take their metal laminates
and flip
them around, put them in the other ski, and it would be the same thing.
Yeah.
So you're getting easier turn initiation, kind of a more progressive and modern feel, and then a more playful finish to the turn in the Mindbender 99.
It's like opposite concepts of how to design a ski.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
And I think it's hilarious, and I think that that's a interesting thing about this wall, is we've seen that a few times. Like, this one's really thick, and this one's really thin, and this one has metal this way, and this one has metal the other way.
This one has no tail rocker. This one's got 3 feet of tail rocker.
Right. And, you know, even within, a millimeter of each other or the same waist width, and even a similar application. Yeah. Like, you get totally different construction techniques.
Similar intended skier, even.
Yep.
It's just kind of different styles and different feel.
Yeah, very interesting. The K2 ends up being slightly smoother overall. This thing is kind of more like the Maverick, where you do feel the steering wheel. Yeah. But not 100%. In a bad way. I think that the polyurethane in those sidewalls makes this thing ski a lot smoother than it lets on.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah. I never would have thought that polyurethane would be a good ski material. In fact, I remember when Dynastar said that they did it, I was like, that's stupid. Yeah, and boy, was I wrong.
I know, and with those Legend skis, it was only a little bit. Yeah. And now it's the whole sidewall, both sides. Right. And that's pretty much throughout their whole line. Yeah. Which is impressive.
It's turned into a proven material for ski construction, which is not what I expected.
Right. You don't think of plastic as being a core material.
No, not at all. I think of rubber dust.
Right. Would you like to discuss that further?
Yes, that was my attempted segue. This is the Storm Rider 102 from Stokely. So we talk a lot about Stokely and their quality of manufacturing and the materials that they use and just the feel that they have. And Storm Rider 102 has been one of my favorite Stokelys for a while now. And I would say my favorite 2 Stokelys right now are Montero AX and Storm Rider 102, which are 22 millimeters difference in width. Yep. No, 20. 22. Okay,
you were right.
I was right the first time. So this ski is back with a slight change to its core, but to me it's really more similar than different. Yeah. We still get that Titanal Tech top sheet, which is huge. Bob talked about insulating properties. And we are not talking about how warm your feet are, but I don't remember where we were talking about quietness, maybe Evolve 100. Yeah. This is the quietest, smoothest ski on this wall, right? Yep. It has to be. It is unbelievably smooth. It is unbelievably damp, but it's under 2,000 grams. So to achieve the strength and stability and smoothness of this ski, but to keep it pretty lightweight is very impressive. And that's really where this Titanal top sheet is helping a lot. By using metal as the top sheet of the ski, they're essentially eliminating an extra sheet. Right. There's no top sheet material because it's just the metal. This is the widest ski that Stokely makes too.
And I was just going to notice and piggyback and say that's the narrowest ski that DPS makes.
Do they not have a 90 anymore?
Not to my knowledge. And they have a Tour that's...
A 90 Tour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so technically they make a narrower ski.
Yeah, but they don't have a...
I understand what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And like, what a great representation of the differences between those companies.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Stokely and DPS basically have opposite concepts and attitudes towards skis.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. So Storm Rider 102 here, I love, love, love the way that this ski turns. In fact, what is the turn radius? 19.8. So pretty big. If I had to guess, I would have guessed 19 or 18, because I do think it's easy to kind of bend this ski into shorter radius turns.
Yeah.
And it's pretty rewarding, like when just linking carves. Like that's probably the first thing I ever did on it, and probably continues to be my favorite thing to do on it. And the shape is supportive of carving turns on firmer snow. Like there's not a ton of tip rocker up here. And then, you know, we talked about the tail, or we kind of like alluded to the tail of this ski. It's pretty darn flat and it's pretty squared off. So with those things, its carving performance and the ability to do so through really any snow condition is not surprising.
No, and
that's what I would expect.
There's more flex. This is kind of where the difference between this and the 95 kind of come through.
More suppleness in the shovel.
Really from here up.
Yeah.
From here back, especially with the new 95, they're a lot more similar.
Yep.
But we get that extra width, that free ride taper look to it. I love how Stokely calls it like their free ride taper and free ride, and it's like,
powder.
Any other company would be like, this is an on-piste ski.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is, you know, that thinning, and so that does make it a little bit more flexible in the shovel.
Yeah.
So that's kind of keeping that tip up. You know, it's interesting going back and looking at the footage and photos, and you do see that. You do see this part of the ski up and out of the snow in a carved turn.
Yep, and it's by design.
Yep.
So that carving performance is, like I said, not surprising. If you showed me this ski on paper or just described it to me, I'd be like, yes, that is going to be really good at carving. What is surprising to me is its agility. It's not tremendously lightweight. It's got a flat tail, but I've never had a hard time like releasing the tail edge and getting the ski to maneuver.
No, and I think that that's a very kind of Stokely thing. Yeah. Is that you get the impression of stability, silence, and power.
Right, but you still get ease of use.
You can deal with it.
Yeah.
And
which is like just very impressive and commendable from a manufacturing perspective. And like that's just another good example of like how Stokely's just a little different. Yeah. Because you can't really, I can't put a finger on why that is, but it is. It's there. It does feel different. If you ski this ski back to back with a Mantra 102, carving performance is relatively similar. The ski's agility and quickness is off the charts here compared to a Mantra 102. Yeah. Which is like that's really cool.
Yeah, and like we've talked about with Stokely's, it's not like they outperform other skis.
No, they just do it with a better feel.
They do it with a better feel, which is, I mean, that's what you're paying for with this, you know, the DPS, the Kesley, these premium products, and even Black Crows here, which is certainly creeping up there in the price spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we get there, Headcore 99, this carbon-powered ski is, I think, just incredibly impressive with what you're getting in terms of performance versus what you're dealing with weight. So 1,720 grams, right there with Hustle in terms of weight.
Even like lighter.
Lighter.
Because this was a shorter length and a little heavier.
This is a 177, I believe.
Yep.
And so what you're getting in terms of performance at the lightweight is just astounding. As we've kind of learned in our discovery of the core skis over the years, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of who benefits from this type of construction and shape. And the general answer is me.
Yeah.
I benefit from this.
Yep. It's interesting because we've found that less aggressive, lighter weight skiers it's just fine.
They're fine.
If you ski with like
they keep it here,
a flatter
they're doing this.
edge angle, exactly, then it works great.
Yep.
But it's like a lightweight skier plus high edge angles equals death.
Yeah. Very subtle, but you're on the right track. That lighter weight skier is going to get it up on the edge angle, but it's not going to be able to bend. So then it's just going to ride straight along the edge, but it's going to want to do this. So that's why I feel like we end up with, people will complain about the chatter of the head and the chatter of carbon-powered skis in general. I don't want to single this one out. But that's what's happening, is that it's too stiff to bend, and so it ends up fluttering. And when that reactive material is put in there, that's giving the impression of chatter.
Yeah, and like I have to ski so fast to push through that chatter and get it to bend. That's why it's like, I enjoy skiing it. I appreciate skiing it, and it's like a fun challenge for me too. But it's not something I would want to do every day. Yeah,
and like I'm the opposite. I would ski this thing all the time. I love how it blends. Like for me, lightweight, and it's easy to use. It's easy to maneuver. And then when you pop out on trail, it just, for me, it feels like a race ski.
Yeah.
I love how this thing carves.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
And not a whole lot of rocker. They keep this thing somewhat cambered, and that really leads to the energy as well.
It's basically that ski to the 105 is where you see a bit of a break in the core line.
This and the 93, and it does go a little gradual, but this and the 93 are very similar. The 87 is a little bit, it's flatter.
More camber, yeah.
Yeah, more camber. But, it's a good thing that this rocker is here. If it was more flat, if it was shaped like, this Stokely or something like that, it would be really, really abusive.
Totally.
If
that had that flat, squared off tail, it would actually be death.
Yeah. it would hold until you were...
Until I hit a tree.
Gone.
Yep.
But, they do a nice job with that rounded shape in the tails and that spoonier shape in the tips. I think that the lighter weight and stiffer flex here, it does allow you to ski it a bit shorter. This is the 177, and I've put a good amount of time in on this length. I still prefer the 184, but I think skiers that are maybe on the verge can go down a little bit, which is fine.
I agree. I was going to say that about the Ranger 102 over here too, but I was a little bit hesitant because I think that's more of a personal experience than a blanket statement.
Yeah. But great tree ski. It's a little stiff for the bumps, at least in terms of like aggressive mogul skiing. But for maneuverability purposes, if you're the type of skier that's like, I mildly enjoy skiing moguls, but I hate when I get stuck in them, and I want something to help me get down and navigate.
Yep.
Like this is a great navigation ski.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like I see a lot of like more moderate speed or slower speed mogul skiers on the Core 93.
Yeah.
And it works really, really well. Like we were saying, like flatter base or flatter edge angle and not super high speeds, it works great. And I think it carries over to this ski too. I think the 99 is a touch more demanding for like intermediate.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that intermediate can ski the Core 93, where the 99 it's just more to handle.
They don't get less stiff, which is crazy. It's like it stays the same stiffness, if not maybe a little bit more.
It might be stiffer than the 93.
It doesn't lose torsional stiffness. Like it stays really, really strong.
Yep, totally. And very, very different than the next ski.
Totally.
Like pretty much polar opposites from shaping perspective and also how they ski. So next ski up here is the Black Crowes Justice.
Which, like, these are two of my favorites on the wall,
This is one of my favorites on the wall. I can't say that the Core 93 is one of my favorite skis on any wall, but again, I appreciate what it brings to the table and who it's for and who should be choosing it. I'm not in that category.
Yep.
Justice, on the other hand, I could own a Justice, and I would be perfectly happy owning a Justice.
I'd take a Justice.
I would ski a Justice. I remember back to the very first time I skied this, which was probably 4 years ago. It was that day we went to Waterville, and there was that one trail that had fresh snow on it, and no one was skiing it. It was like a little bit over a horizon line. And you and I found this trail with just untouched powder and skied it all day long.
Happy to oblige.
And no one else skied it, which was really weird. And that was my initial reaction to this ski. And it was like such a spot-on test opportunity.
Yeah.
Like it was perfect for what the Justice is trying to be and wants to be. Because this ski is like equal parts powder ski and strong all-mountain ski.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool whenever a company can achieve that. And I have always really enjoyed comparing this ski to specifically the Stance 102, but these days really the next three skis, as they all kind of follow at least a similar recipe, but I kind of think Justice and Stance at least take it to another level. So really cool ski, poplar wood core, H-shaped metal that we see in Orb and Serpo. So kind of a theme for Black Crows in certain skis, but like Bob was saying earlier, none of their skis feel like just wider versions of another ski. Like the Justice has a completely different personality than the Serpo, which has a different personality than the Orb. So I think that's really cool. 1,950 grams, so not tremendously heavy. This is a 177.4.
Yeah,
I can't forget that.
Very specific.
So despite its use of fairly significant amounts of metal, it's not crazy heavy, and I think you'll see, I'm curious, I don't actually know the weights of the next three skis off the top of my head, but I'm curious to see how it compares. But rocker profile is huge on this ski, not just huge from its actual shape, but huge in what it gives to the ski and its performance. So a lot of tip rocker here, and then a lot of tail rocker too. Like almost equal amounts of tip and tail rocker. It is not a twin tip, but there is a lot of tail rocker back here. 20-meter turn radius with this amount of rocker, and this ski is incredibly drifty. Like when you have it in the correct snow conditions, and for this, that would be deep-ish soft snow, it feels like a powder ski. Like the way that it reacts, the way that it kind of bobs up and down in soft snow, like it always wants to come back to the surface because there's so much float here. And then a straight-ish cut like this, a 20-meter radius, you know, there's not like early taper or anything. With that rocker, you can just flick the tail edge. Like it's so easy to release the tail edge. So for a ski that's this strong, because when you ski it at high speeds, like straight down the fall line, it's strong. It's pretty stiff. It's pretty powerful. It's got excellent vibration damping, but then you can get it into soft snow and it's just intuitive, easy, floaty, and fun.
The carving capabilities stick out to me the most.
Round, nice round turns.
We talked about, I think we talked about the Ranger 108 and how it states a shorter radius, but it feels longer. And that this, to me, is the opposite, where it states a long radius, but man, does this thing come across the hill.
100%.
Like, it just initiates turns extremely well. It follows through in a round and predictable format.
Yeah, round, clean carbs, which you might not expect from a ski with this much rocker.
This much rocker and just this, this type of profile does not really lend to the type of powerful carves that this ski can make.
But look at this.
Yeah,
right here in the shovel.
This is where is Serpo.
That's pulling you into the turn.
This is what we feel in Serpo. That's like, really the biggest similarity.
Like look at the difference there.
Yeah.
Like the rocker profile between these two skis is kind of similar, but this ski is straighter through the shovel here, which totally changes how they feel on firm snow.
Yeah, and you could put this Dynastar right there with it too, with just a totally different shovel shape and style.
Yeah, but it's been one of my favorite Black Crow skis for a while now. I think it's so cool. You don't see a ton of them. I think like it's hard to break into this category.
Yeah.
There's especially over there. Like there's a lot of heavy hitting skis over there. Like how are you going to enforce, how are you going to, convince somebody to get a Justice over a Mindbender, over a Stance, over an Enforcer. It can be challenging, and like you alluded to, like they're also not cheap.
Right.
So I think it's a phenomenal ski. It's so good. I do think it's best for an advanced expert level skier. I think Serpo can be skied by almost anybody. I wouldn't put a beginner on it, but it's pretty approachable. Justice gets, I don't know, I think just like someone with pretty advanced technique is going to be able to do everything that it's capable of, where an intermediate might not appreciate what it can do.
Yeah, there's some demand here. I think this would be a difficult, like, everyday ski if you're not being aggressive.
I agree, 100%.
But if you are, then it's absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
I think that's nice. I think you like breaking into a category. I think that Declivity is a nice example of a ski that is very effectively kind of nudged its way into this group.
Yeah. 100. Yeah, totally.
They've done so very successfully.
It's a legitimate contender, and you see a decent amount of them on the hill.
Yeah, and like kind of similar to what we talked about with Liberty, that's company's more known free ride style. Armada certainly has the freestyle background.
Yep.
And that for them to make this just absolutely crushing all mountain ski is really impressive.
Yeah, totally.
And they do it, you know, a couple different ways. We have a lighter weight Karuba wood core here, and then their metal laminate has that articulated Titanal banding. So taking those slits out, replacing them with elastomer material really quiets that torsional flex of the ski. We talked about like quietness and damp skis. Stokely came to mind, Liberty Evolve, even the Scott. This thing does it just as well as those, if not better. Certainly one of the more silent and smooth skis out there, which is really impressive. Just under 2,000 grams here, 1,950. And one of the main things that we see here is this camber underfoot.
Yeah.
You know, that really gives this thing a lot of pop.
Yeah.
So when we get into this 102 zone, you know, we're kind of looking at this really bowed out shape, which blends that carving power with more of that free ride personality. We had the 108 in our 110 range, and that's a bigger difference in terms of rocker and taper. So 102 certainly brings it back to more of that all mountain style, which I think is
they're quite different.
They're quite different.
Yeah.
And that really kind of, and I think that they do a good job of going 82, 88, 92, 102, 108, and making them very different skis.
Yep.
So this does stand on its own quite nicely, which I think is really impressive.
It's a great ski. I always really enjoy skiing it. You skied it quite a bit on a media shoot day with Armada this year, and we had Matt on it too. And yeah, it's just cool to see, like, skis at a really high level.
Yeah,
it can do a lot of different things, and I'm always kind of fascinated and impressed with the progression that Armada has gone through as a brand.
Yeah,
like I never really thought Armada would have a ski like that can stand up to everything that's sitting on that wall next to it. So really cool.
Yeah, and there's not a lot that, if you skied this, you wouldn't say this is an amazing blank.
No, pretty well rounded.
It's when you put it through the whole day, the whole week, the whole season, that you're like, well, that really checked every box that I was intending it to check.
Yep, like it's not as surfy as the Justice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those skis that just, it has all the ingredients.
Yeah.
And it's not like, you don't take a bite and you're like, whoa, that's really spicy. You take a bite and you're like, this is a really nice mix of flavors here.
Yeah, I'll have some more.
Right.
Yeah, no, it really does. It does mix those things really well.
Yeah.
And even just looking at it, you know, shape and profile, construction. There's nothing that stands out as being dramatic like the QST,
yeah,
or overly powerful like a Mantra 102 or a Kesley,
yeah,
but rather it blends those things extremely well.
I actually think the only reason it's further to the right on this wall compared to the Justice is the shape of the tail.
Yep.
That's it.
A little bit rounder. You know, it is like good medium stiffness.
Yeah, like I think Justice is stiffer.
I would say so.
But the slightly flatter tail and that declivity just gives it like a little bit more oomph.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit stiffer with the Justice.
Yeah, that's what Justice to me is just so unique in the combination of stiffness and rocker.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, and it's actually like kind of similar to QST98 concepts.
Yeah.
Like build a crazy, playful, floaty, smeary shape, but build some strength into it. Obviously, Black Crowes with Justice kind of emphasizes the strength more than Salomon would, particularly because in two skis, we're going to look at Salomon's answer to something like Justice and declivity. But first,
made in Austria too, that Armada.
It's a real,
which I think is really interesting.
Real ski.
Yep.
Another real ski. This is the K2 Mindbender 99 Ti. Back again for another season. Just a cosmetic upgrade for 2023-24. K2 kind of gave us the expanded Mindbender carbon line for this season, leaving the Ti versions the same. This ski did change for last year, and we'll look at some of those changes. They tweaked the metal shape a little bit, but I don't think that's the big change. I think the bigger change is found in shape, and particularly tail shape. But correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, this will correct me. I was going to be right. So this ski separates a little bit from what we've looked at thus far in the sense that this has a denser wood core. So this is an ash wood core, and then we get that Titanal Y beam. So full width metal underfoot, kind of prongs along the along the forebody or along the edges through the forebody, which we're seeing similar prongs in things like Rustler and Justice and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's not, it's not uncommon to see that application. Even like Mantra 102 has some similarities to how they place the metal. And then like Bob was saying earlier, they're just putting the metal in the middle of the ski. So like the opposite of that Dynastar basically. And that's basically just trying to control torsional stiffness in different portions of the ski, which I think that's like something that K2 feels more focused on than like any other brand, or at least they talk about it more, because they talk about it with Reckoners, and Reckoners have like a very different use of how they're controlling torsional stiffness, but it's part of the conversation. So in this ski, it's very strong and stiff up here in the forebody, but the tail is looser. Before I take it off the scale, 1,980 grams, so another one that, like, kudos to K2 for not going over 2,000 grams for a really strong ski with a bunch of metal in it. So taking a look at shape here, quite a bit of tip rocker there, and then tail rocker increased for this past season compared to the previous version of this ski.
Yeah, and the length.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of splay here, but yeah, the length, like there's a lot of tail rocker back here now. And that to me was a big improvement on this ski, and I think it puts it more into the conversation with skis like Justice and Stance 102, and it's even like a little bit more rocker than declivity, so it's even kind of like further into the soft snow maneuverability side of the spectrum than declivity, where previously it felt like it was more in like Enforcer 100 world. And I prefer this version of it. And I think you'll see that reflected in Matt Stromecki skiing it in some of the footage in this video. Is although it's a strong ski with metal in it, it's pretty agile and can dance in soft snow, which I think is important for a K2.
Totally.
K2 is not, it's not supposed to be like super serious all the time. And in fact, disruptions are kind of weird. Like especially the Disruption Ti2, which is like one of my favorite narrow race style carving skis. But even that, it's like, oh, this doesn't feel like a K2. But this feels 100% like a K2, and it still is strong too. So you can still get this thing onto firm snow and just rail carving turns. It can, I mean, it compares really well with anything over there for carving performance. I would say it's not as precise as like the last 3 skis on the wall or Stormrider 102 or Core 99, but the torsional stiffness and the strength and the ability to hold an edge is all there. And I just think like giving it more soft snow performance was huge. I think it's easier to ski. I think there's a bigger range of what you can do with it. I think it's just a better ski objectively.
Yeah, there used to be more comparisons between
exactly
the K2 and the Enforcer.
Exactly.
And now it's differentiated itself a little bit, which I think is nice.
And I think there are way more skiers that can benefit from this than from the previous version of it. Yep. And that's like something that the industry is getting better at as a whole. Like for a long time we were stuck in this world of like, let's see how strong we can make this ski. Good luck.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, like...
Not everyone needs that, even remotely all the time.
Right, and especially not from every manufacturer.
Right.
Like, stop. Like, yeah, sure, like, a couple of you can make this ski, but not... Like, we don't need 25 manufacturers all making a ski that's 99 underfoot that's super stiff with a flat tail.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? So it's nice to see that we have, like, more clear differences between all the choices now.
Yeah, and it's not like that much of a challenge to take your race construction and just
make it
wider.
Right, and like it's been a decade since that really was happening, but it's nice to see that we've come away from that.
Yeah, the challenge is incorporating different construction and profile techniques to make this thing under 2,000 grams and still feel like a Cadillac and still be able to perform, you know, with agility in softer snow.
Now we're in a golden age of ski manufacturing right now, Bob.
You're right, Jeff. I think that this is a good example of how a company can take an existing line, like that Stance 102 up until this year was one of my favorite skis for pretty much anything soft, you know, in terms of being able to be smooth and powerful and stable as well as agile. And they took that successful thing and they made it even more energetic without really losing a whole lot of what I really liked about it.
Right. It's like a similar change that Mindbender went through. This, they did it with changes to construction. That, they did it more with changes to shape, although there were changes to construction. Yeah,
but this one definitely has the more different build.
Yeah.
So Stance 102 gets a refurbishment over this year, I guess.
Yeah.
They've kept the footprint the same. They have blended poplar and Karuba in the wood core instead of just poplar, so they're lightening the wood core. They're also removing the carbon flax and using carbon basalt, so just a different additive there, lightening the weight a little bit, making it a little bit more approachable. And then also just taking kind of a note from the declivity here with their articulated banding and just making slits in the side. So they're just making this forebody a little bit more approachable and easy to float. And I think that that's really nice, kind of taking this thing and making it more of a floater. It used to, with the build and the shape, it used to really have to get it up to speed to go.
Yeah, it was a bit more of a tank.
Yeah, and now it's a little bit nicer. We are over 2,000 grams, 2060. And you're going to get that with 2 sheets of metal.
Yeah, it's 182 or 183.
183.
So it's a big ski.
Yeah. And in this length here, we're looking at a 23-meter turn radius. In the 190, which I prefer, you get the 24-meter turn radius. So there's a pretty straight cut going on here. And, you know, when you're kind of looking down the ski, you know, there's not a whole lot going on. And I think it's nice to kind of play it off of that. Or I was going to say the QST within the same model line, but certainly when you look down,
very different.
Those skis, they're just extraordinarily different in terms of where the thick and thin and wide and narrow parts are. But yeah, this
pretty straight cut there.
Yeah, And it's also pretty flat. So they, excuse me, you know, they do have that camber underfoot, but if you decamber it, you know, there's not a whole lot of drama going on here. The rocker in the shovel is long, but it is low. Yep. So for the length, the splay is very, very minimal. You really just see that very gradual, very slight bend. And then we see that in the tail too. It really just kind of starts and then is angled. You know, there's no curvature.
Yep.
So we see more curvature in stuff like the Justice here,
yep.
Or even the K2, whereas this is just kind of a kink and then a straight.
And I would say that's why it's further to the right in this comparison than the
Yeah.
Justice, is it's got a longer effective edge when you're at certain edge angles.
Yeah.
So you can get better tracking from that ski when you're skiing at high speeds through like choppy snow or really through anything. That ski is going to stay a little bit more composed because the edge is staying in contact with the snow.
Yeah. You do have to get it to go though. I think that if you're kind of making those short to medium style turns in more technical terrain, it can handle it. But anything that you're looking to kind of get through with ease, you need to let it run a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's a factor of that turn shape. And that's kind of another, like you were saying, keeping it to the righter side of the wall is
Yeah.
that it's in, you know, difficult, challenging conditions and terrain. It's not as easy to get from edge to edge.
Right.
You want to let it go.
Right.
But nice even flex too. I mean, this thing is extremely smooth. That is one of the things that stands out to me. And a lot of that has to do with that long turn radius and kind of flatter overall style.
Yep.
But you can let this thing run. I love this thing on groomers. You just got to get it going.
I love that ski. It's great.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those skis where I'd rather ski it somewhere out west.
Yeah.
Where I can really let it run without having to worry about whatever comes next or what's over the horizon line or anything like that. But no, it's awesome. And it is it's a nice blend of like everything that an advanced expert skier shopping for a narrower freeride ski is looking for.
Yeah.
Soft snow use, it's got some smeariness and surfiness to it, but then it can withstand high speed, aggressive skiing through anything.
And I think this new build works well in this width. You know, it's
I agree.
The new 96, new 90, they're wonderful skis.
Yeah, I would have been fine with them sticking with the denser, heavier wood on the 90 and 96.
Yeah.
I still like both of those skis, and I don't think, like you said at the beginning of this, it didn't take that much away.
Yeah.
But yeah, the new construction in this ski is hands down better than the previous Stance 102, no matter who skis it. I can almost guarantee that. And I said almost guarantee because there's always an outlier.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think that that's a really nice addition to this lineup here.
Yeah. Next ski is a classic, a legend. Can we call it a legend now?
I can call it a legend.
An iconic ski.
Sure.
This is the Enforcer 100 from Nordica. It's been around for a long time now. This is basically like the second version of the modern Enforcer that we've got. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a huge difference.
No, it wasn't a huge change.
Yeah.
But they did tweak it a little bit. But yeah, this is a heavy hitter in this category. We talk about Enforcers a lot. I think these days, most of the time that we're talking about Enforcers, we're talking about how their shape inspired like a fundamental change in the entire industry. Mm-hmm. Like this ski inspired so many skis that are on this wall right now from a shaping perspective.
Yeah, we could go down the line and be like, this
Enforcer.
wouldn't exist, this wouldn't exist,
Totally.
this wouldn't exist.
Totally.
Without this shape.
At least not as easily.
Yeah.
Maybe they would have existed, but still, like you cannot deny that Enforcers helped shape the entire ski market to what it is today.
Totally.
So Enforcer 100, we have a performance wood core in here, so a pretty dense wood core, kind of going back to like closer to what we were seeing in that K2.
Yep.
And then we get 2 full sheets of metal in this ski, which I think it's also fair to say we just said a lot of positive things about, a lot of complimentary things about Enforcers. I think it's fair to say that at this point, some of the industry is running away from them a little bit.
Well, this is kind of that holdover from what you were just talking about.
Correct.
With, I forget which one, but let's see how strong and wide we can make a ski.
Correct.
And even though this one had very progressive shaping for the time, it still kind of falls under that category for construction purposes.
Yep. But that is not to say that there is not still a really good application for this ski, and there are 100% still a lot of Enforcer skiers out there. There are a lot of skiers where among the 20 skis on this wall, this is the best choice for you.
Yep.
Those are generally high-speed, powerful, strong skiers who want a versatile all-mountain ski but want something that carves beautifully.
Yep.
That's kind of how I think about this ski. So 2,220 grams.
It's like a 200-gram jump, I think, from
anything else that we've looked
Yeah.
at. And I think the next two skis are going to be more consistent with this than other skis that we've looked at. But it's a heavy ski. It's a big, strong, heavy ski. It's not the stiffest thing in the world. Like, I'm pretty sure Mantra is going to be stiffer. Core 99 is definitely stiffer. But it's certainly stiff enough. Like, it's a strong ski, and then it's very torsionally stiff. And, like, the shape, I have no idea how many times we've had this conversation, but the shape is still so cool. It's just such an awesome concept, and it's amazing that, like, skis existed as long as they did before somebody really, like, leaned on this concept.
Yeah.
So basically what goes on here is that's tip rocker, and the higher your edge angle, the longer the effective edge is, and the reason for that is this taper shape. So they kind of like sort of pioneered this shape where the higher you tip the ski on edge, the more of this tip comes into contact with the snow. It's really cool, and it 100% works, and it gives this ski just such a intuitive feel as long as you're a pretty strong skier. You do have to drive it. You do need to ski it pretty fast, at least to appreciate what it can do. And when you do that, there's really nothing else like as rewarding as the Enforcer 100 in certain specific applications, and most of those for me involve carving.
I have the 191 in this ski, and I've had it in 2 feet of snow.
Yep.
And other than the weight, it's a wonderful floater.
Yep.
Like, it's amazing how well that shape works, even with that flatter tail.
Yeah, so there's not much tail rocker.
Not much, but it's, you know, it's got that rounded tail shape.
Yep.
But I was really impressed with how well it handled very deep snow.
Yep.
You know, sure, you're sinking to the bottom a little bit more. It's not a Liberty.
Especially in the tail.
It's not an Origin 101 when it comes to powder performance.
Yep.
But it still held up surprisingly well.
17.3 meter radius turn in this 179. So that's a little bit different than a lot of the skis that we've looked at on this wall.
Yep.
Certainly different than that Stance 102, like considerably different than that Stance 102. So again, like if you have the necessary skiing style and strength and like commitment to your turns and your skiing, it actually comes across the fall line beautifully.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a shorter turn radius than a lot of skis up here, and it's like, it's not easy to get there.
Yeah.
But if you're like strong enough and up for it, then once you get there, it's just, it's beautifully rewarding in how round the turns are, how it comes across the fall line, how it intuitively links turns. Like it's amazing how like the varying degrees of how much you tip it can really manipulate what's happening on the snow. And it's just, I think it's fair to say that it's, I'm hesitant to use the word outdated because it's not. It's still a perfectly legitimate option among all the options out there. But it'll be interesting to see what comes next.
I personally think that this shape works better in that 94.
I think like there are other people that agree with you.
That's where the antiquity comes in.
Yes.
Is that in this width, this construction and shape feels a little outdated. But
Yep.
with the 94, it's just it opens up a lot more. It focuses more on that on-trail performance, and I think that that's where this thing really, really shines. And you know, why not have a little bit more edge control and grip and maneuverability with this proven construction and shape?
Well, and I think it's probably fair to say that within the Enforcer line, since the introduction of the 104, it's been harder for certain skiers to land on the 100.
Yep.
That's certainly true for me.
Yeah, I don't find that there's a whole lot that this can do that the 94 can't. So you're getting a little bit of a weight savings, a little more agility,
right,
and just an easier overall.
And then if you want an Enforcer, but you want to use it mostly for soft snow, you can just go to the 104.
Right.
So it leaves the 100 in a little bit, it's like kind of no man's land, but it's not no man's land because there are people watching this video right now that's the best choice on this wall for them.
It's funny.
Guarantee.
It's funny that Nordica kind of they did it to themselves.
They 100% did it to themselves. They made such a good ski that they couldn't change it.
Yeah, and that they also like there are others, you know, now with like Unlimited even, you know, it's like, oh, that 104 Unlimited, you know, it does a lot of the flotation things this thing does at a lighter weight, and you know, 94 and 88, they're really kind of made it an interesting fit for that ski in their lineup.
Yep.
This one kind of takes the carving potential to the next level, don't you think?
Yeah, this ski's crazy.
Yeah, this is the Kesley MX98. We got on the scale 22, 23. We're going to take 200 off. So right around 2,000 grams here in the 178, I believe. Yep, so 98 millimeters underfoot. And this also, I think, falls into that category of how wide can we make a front side ski?
Yeah.
You know, there's not a whole lot about this thing that screams true all-mountain versatility.
And it's a tricky ski because there's not a big market for it.
No.
Like there's way more people that can benefit from an Enforcer 100 than an MX98. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of camber for 2023.
Yeah.
98 underfoot. Like I don't know that there are too many people that want this anymore, where when you bump down to the 88, I feel completely differently.
Well, the funny thing is like we get on this thing on, you know, a media day, or we bring it out for a demo, a film, and for 2 runs, it's like, wow, there's nothing else out there like this ski.
Totally.
You know, and then after 2 runs, you're like, oh, I could really go for a FX96
or a
right
ZX100.
Now. ZX100.
Yeah, and like you also need to go really fast.
Yeah.
Like I've got footage of Ryan skiing this ski, who like on paper, he's one of the only people in the world that's like really gonna truly utilize what this can do, like truly get its full potential.
Yeah.
But the footage that I'm thinking of is on kind of flat terrain, and it's like it doesn't look very like fun and dynamic because the ski needs to go fast. It's a 21 meter turn radius, I think.
Yeah, and like we talked about when we were discussing the ZX, this uses thinner stringers of poplar and beechwood interlaced in here, so they're really kind of focusing on that stiffness.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when we add vertical metal struts to the Evolve 100 from the Origin.
It stiffens it.
Yeah, so just picture doing that like all the way across.
Yeah.
And that's what you're getting with this. You're getting the 2 sheets of metal, the fiberglass, carbon outlined hollow tech. You know, you're getting those quality and precise ingredients to this ski. Very premium product. You know, they're certainly putting their race room technology into this.
I love the metal finish to the tail. It's
like,
ridiculous.
You know, we see this in a lot of Kesleys, you know, the MX line and their race skis. You know, it's also something we see in like Head Super Shape.
Yep.
You know, where
totally
it's like
metal
they're just
squared off tail.
Yeah, jamming metal back in here. We didn't talk about it with the Justice, but they actually do that
too.
In the Justice as well. So an extra bit of boost coming out of the tail there.
And like maybe somewhat superficial, but definitely increases durability.
Yeah, and it looks super cool too. But when you put this thing together, this is where the demand starts to really kind of jump off the page. I mean, that looks like a super shaped tail.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, there's minimal, if any, rocker, you know, looking through there. It just exists to keep it from being 100% fully cambered, tip to tail. You know, we're getting a longer effective edge. That's equating to that nearly 21 meter turn radius.
Yeah, I think it's actually 20.9.
20.9,
right?
yeah. And then no early taper here either. So really taking a lot of front side ski technology and just like blowing it up in terms of width.
Yeah, very precise.
Yep.
Very torsionally stiff, holds an edge super well. It's going to be pretty darn demanding if you take it off trail.
Yeah, and they, you know, this is Kesley's version of tip rocker in this ski. It's about as minimal as you're going to get.
Yeah.
So there is that camber underfoot though, so you can get that energy out of the ski. But really only if you're, like you said, if you're pushing for speed and you're using those higher edge angles, you're going to be able to get just an insane amount of performance out of this ski.
Yeah.
It just is really demanding and hard to get there.
Yeah, totally.
But if you're willing to do it, you're going to be rewarded with some of the best turns out there. You know, we talked about that MX83, you know, in the mid-80s comparison, and that ski is just easier because it's narrower.
Yep.
To get this amount of material up and going just takes that much more effort.
Yeah, MX83 is way more approachable than
Yeah.
MX98.
You know, any off-trail activity you want to do on this, like we were talking about, like Colorado, open areas, chopped, you know, crud, cut up snow, wind blown, it's going to be able to do that because it's wide enough. But it's just, you know, kind of similar to that Evolve 100. It's going to cut through.
Yeah, it wants to go straight and it wants to go fast.
Yeah.
It's like pretty much the opposite of ZX 100.
Right.
Which is nice to have both, you know, those extreme alternatives.
Yeah.
Or those extreme differences within a single manufacturer. But yeah, and like if you're buying it and you're going to take it off trail, you just need to have that skiing style. You ski really straight and really fast.
Yep. But I also really like seeing how Kesley has two of those skis in that same zone.
And then last ski here, this is the Volkl Mantra 102. I do think this ski belongs all the way on the far right of this comparison. I do think it's a little more ski in some applications than the MX98. I think a lot of that's coming from the width, actually, like just the way that it handles choppy, variable snow conditions. But I also think that Volkl puts a few elements in these skis that make it maybe slightly more approachable than an MX98. I'm not sure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know the elements that I'm like thinking of?
If you're strictly talking about, but like from a performance standpoint, if you're strictly talking about on trail, then I would put this one here. But if we're talking about
yeah, yep,
all around,
I agree. That's kind of why.
Like I'm not gonna ski this off trail. I am gonna ski that one off trail.
Right. Yep. So Mantra 102 here. Very, very strong, kind of precise directional freeride ski, really. Yeah. It basically takes like Kendo and M6 Mantra performance and reapplies it in a wider ski. And like you could say the same thing about the Katana. You can go one more step up in width if you need more soft snow performance.
And the interesting thing about here is they don't vary rocker and taper between Kendo, Mantra, and 102.
No, they're basically all the same thing.
Basically all the same, whereas when we see some other
Black Pros,
they're varying those things per. We talked declivity, I think we talked about it the most.
Right. It's perfectly fair to say that this is a wide Kendo 88.
Yep.
Yep. So multi-layer wood core in this ski. Again, another dense, pretty heavy wood core, pretty stiff too. We get tailored Titanal frame. We get tailored carbon tip. So love the tailored carbon tip. I think that was a huge improvement to these skis. And then we get that 3D radius. So 28 in the shovel, 18 underfoot, 26 in the tail. There are some other construction elements and details going on in here, but we could spend all day talking about what Volkl puts into their skis. So I talked about like a little bit of approachability and like forgiveness. And to me, that's coming from the longer radius in the tips and tails, because I feel like it's slightly easier to break free from a turn than MX-98, particularly in soft snow.
Yeah.
But 2,200 grams, so we're basically in like Enforcer 100 range for weight. Like those are the outliers for weight. Those are the heavy skis. And this ski has kind of a flatter, more precise shape. So there is not much tip rocker up here, especially compared to an Enforcer 100. And there's really like almost no tail rocker. Like there is, but barely. And there's not any early taper either. So you get a very, very long, effective edge in this ski. Stiff, supportive flex pattern. And this thing absolutely rips carving turns. But what I think is cool about it is you can make those like shorter skidded turns on the side of the trail on this ski more easily than MX-98.
Yeah.
For sure.
I had an absolute blast on this thing.
Really, I know you did.
Ever since, but this new updated construction, I think, really opens up this 102 to more skiers. You know, again, it still kind of fits into that mold of this is a wide, powerful ski, and it's not for everyone, but it is more accessible than it used to be.
Yes.
Which I think is nice.
Yep.
It's still very much like a full-on tank, but it turns.
Yep.
Like I am impressed with the cornering ability of a ski this heavy and stiff.
Yep. No, it's good. It can turn.
Yeah.
It does it pretty well. It's like it's kind of it's more dynamic than you would expect in a ski that's this heavy and this straight and kind of fairly one-dimensional in how it's designed.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And if you're a strong, powerful skier and you want the strongest, most powerful ski in this width range, I'd say go with the Mantra 102. Like, it's a lot of ski. I think as soon as we got to Justice, there aren't many skiers out there that need more than what Justice offers or Declivity 102 or Mindbender 99. Yeah. But if you are that skier, just move to Mantra 102. And if you want to know why an Enforcer 100 is kind of easy to ski a Mantra 102.
Right.
Like, there are differences between those skis, and I think it's pretty noticeable.
I skied this length, the 177, which is, I think, interesting. Just a note on length. You know, I had success on these, but something like
you go 190.
This, I go 190.
Yeah, that is interesting.
You know, and they're both 102s with similar like metal concepts.
Yep.
But they're just different enough that it makes a big difference in terms of how you feel on a certain length.
Yep. I agree.
The 183 in this just doesn't feel quite substantial enough.
Yep.
But the 177 in both of these skis, I mean, again, I'd opt for the 184 in the head. I would have to have kind of a more serious discussion with myself if I wanted to make that move here.
I bet it'd be like an east-west thing too.
Totally.
If you were out west, you'd go longer, hands down.
But very interesting to see the differences between different widths and different skis, and it's just a good reminder that there's not one rule. There's not like, this is how tall I am, this is the length ski I should get.
Your skis should be up to your eyebrows.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah.
Choosing skis is not a simple black and white thing. There's a lot to consider.
Totally.
And that's why we have 2-hour conversations about it. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed that. That was our comparison of 2024 men's all-mountain / freeride skis around 100 underfoot.
Yep.
And a lot of really good skis up here. I can't point to a single ski up here and not think of the right skier for it.
Right.
So I think that's pretty cool. They all have their application, they all have their strengths, and they all have their weaknesses too.
Yeah, and like, that's a great, they always bring up good conversations online.
Yep.
You know, either comparison of this, a twin tip that's not up here like you were saying earlier,
yep,
or length.
Yep.
You know, there's such a variance in those things, and always happy to field those.
Yep. So as usual, don't hesitate to leave a question or a comment. We'll get back to you with an answer or an opinion as soon as we can. And yeah, look out for more 2024 ski comparisons. We've got a lot more to go through. And yeah, we will talk to you when it comes time.
Bye.